a man who lost his arm, became very depressed. He loved to play golf, but with only one arm he knew he could never play again. One day, in his despair, he decided to commit suicide and end it all. He was standing on top of a building looking down when he saw a man down on a sidewalk, skipping along, whooping and kicking up his heels. He looked closer and saw that this man didn't have any arms at all. He started thinking, there goes a man with no arms skipping down the sidewalk so happy, and going on with his life. He ran down to the man and thanked him for saving his life. Then he asked, "Why are you so happy anyway?" The man replied, "I'm not happy. My balls itch."
Inappropriate humor is the only thing that has gotten us through this. People just stare. I mean, in the airports or anytime. And so anytime I can tell if somebody's really staring and really kind of a little gawky. I think it's one thing to look, but the other where they just can't figure out. I'll say stuff like, "Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Just stay still," and walk away. Just a goof.
How people think about exercise.
It's a marrying of technology, of having a personal coach in your living room.
You probably see his exercise equipment in nearly every gym you go to.
Good job, good job. Come on, give us 50, give us 100. Look at those guns. She can give us 50. She can give us 100. Let's go, girl.
How many people in the fitness industry don't need a last name for people to recognize them?
Augie, one word. You know, he's a rock star.
Somebody told me that Augie, if I didn't show up this year, would beat the shit out of me. Now I pray for the day that Augie will beat the shit out of me. Here we go. This is what tonight's all about. Because there ain't no mountain high enough. Baby, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby. If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, baby.
So now, it is my privilege and it is my honor to introduce the chairman of the board of the ALS Therapy Development Institute, ladies and gentlemen, Lynne and Augie Nieto.
Thank you for being here tonight. I'm not hiding far enough behind Augie so you can't see my ankles shaking again, or see my notes that I didn't write big enough to see without glasses, but I'm too vain to bring them up here. Just saying.
Briefly, for those of you that don't know Augie started Life Fitness 35 years ago, more than that actually, when he was in college. An amazing entrepreneur, continues to be that amazing entrepreneur, and 10 years ago we were diagnosed with ALS. I hope you know nothing about ALS. I hope it never touches your family. But it's a progressive neurological disease that weakens your voluntary muscles at Augie would, but that's for golf tournaments, we don't go there. But only your voluntary muscles. Just got a visual. Just saying.
Augie's a strong personality, so long before ALS, I have my doubts that we'd still be married today if he hadn't gotten ALS. We were having difficulties. He was just angry, and he's a bulldozer. He's still a bulldozer. I'm not gonna lie here, but he treats me as an equal now.
Is there more vodka? We need a bottle of vodka.
We need vodka now.
No. He's got a go to. He's got a 3, 2, 1, go. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go! Take it down.
I just want you to know, Augie is an honourable Australian at the moment.
But anybody can go to Australia and anybody can be a citizen.
Augie and I went to junior high together, but we didn't know each other. And then I kind of knew of him. There was this fat kid in the back of the class when we were 15, and then came back after summertime, and the laugh was still there, but I couldn't find the fat kid. He lost all this weight over the summer, and that was our junior year in high school, and that's when we started dating.
I should mention that I wasn't just working out. I also ate nothing but watermelon for 8 months. I ended up with 2 root canals and 6 cavities. But I lost 102 pounds.
He would come over after his work every Saturday and come wash my car. And there was just something very sweet about this attention toward me. And we had fun. It was just, I don't know, but I know I loved him then. It wasn't the crush thing. But we went off to college and ultimately married our college sweethearts, both of us.
Good morning, Augie. TV on. Okay.
So his normal day starts about 4:30.
Do you want me to take off your mask?
His eyes are weak, and when he falls asleep, he'll fall asleep with his eyes open and his eyes dry out. So I'll put these, look like a little kind of patch. He'll have TENS machine put on his face to help stimulate the circulation. So I wake up, read the paper, check some emails, cuddle with Ruby, my dog. Actually, it's Augie's dog. I have very fond memories of shaving him. There was something very sensual about that, but it's better that I'm his wife and not his caregiver anymore.
So last month, that was my 5 years with Augie. Aside from me, there are 4 caregivers. I am the longest hours working with Augie. I'm the only one male, and the rest are females. We are all Filipino caregivers here. That's our culture also, helping each one another.
Come here. It's $250,000 a year to keep Augie alive. Some people can do it with family and friends, but most people can't afford it. We are so lucky in this disease. We're so lucky.
What are you doing? You're lazy today, huh? Cold? Warm enough?
I used to make a cappuccino for Lynn every morning. I was an early riser, and I like to start my workday very early. I'd get up, maybe go for a run, tackle my emails, then wake Lynn up with a cup in bed. I like to call it foreplay.
He was a bigger-than-life guy.
I remember him driving his Ferrari. We were having a big conference. There was a long driveway up, and you could hear Augie racing the engine the whole way up so that when he got there, everybody knew about it.
There was an article written about Augie. He's on the cover of it, and I said, hey, sign this for me, right? You're a big swinging dick right now. You know, everybody wants a life cycle. Augie is all those words that people describe successful people by. Augie was arrogant. Augie was tough. Augie was mean. Augie was selfish. But, I mean, look, Augie's an idiot. If you want to make all the mistakes you can on Earth, I mean, Augie would be right up there, right?
So we were traveling in Finland, and the entire day is going on and off the trail. Now, when I say on and off the trail, it sounds like, what's the big deal? Well, the snow is about 30 feet deep. They're on and off the trail, on and off the trail, and they're running over these little saplings. And these little tiny saplings that you see are actually treetops. Probably going less than 20 miles an hour, but they hit a tree that was about the size, maybe twice the size of a baseball bat. And the snowmobile just went wham!
I hit the only tree north of the Arctic Circle. Shattered my helmet. Shattered my kneecap. I thought I would have a compassionate wife on the other end of the phone. Instead, she said I had no right to drive a snowmobile into a tree with 5 people behind me. To be honest, that was the first time I realized it's not just about me. I went home, got my kneecap fixed. The doctor said I wouldn't need a cast as long as I didn't do anything stupid. Before I knew it, I had successfully broken my knee 2 more times. It really takes 3 times with a sledgehammer over my head to make me wake up a little bit.
We were on a trip to Vietnam. Janet, Lynn, me, and Augie, and we were there for 3 weeks. We were sitting out at the pool. I'll never forget it. I mean, I know exactly where it was. I can see it like right here in front of me, at a table, and Augie's like, Scott, I can't shave. He said, I can't I can't reach across and shave. And I'm like, oh, you muscle-bound gorilla, stop lifting the weights, and he goes, my arm's twitching.
First, I started getting weak in my hands. My muscles were twitching.
He was trying to water ski in the Mekong Delta.
That handle kept coming out of his hand.
I had the sense my muscles were disconnecting right before my eyes.
So you do the dumb thing, you look online. I thought Augie was being a hypochondriac. And like, okay, we're getting older, not all things are gonna work. And we went on a Thursday to the Mayo Clinic.
He calls me up. He said they've narrowed it down to spinal cancer or ALS. And he says, Scott, pray for spinal cancer. I mean, who says that shit?
So ALS attacks the motor neurons in the spinal cord primarily. Nerves in your spinal cord called motor neurons basically emanate from the spinal cord, and then the end of that axon touches your muscles. Basically, your brain sends that signal along the motor neuron how you want to move, what you want to grab. In ALS, that motor neuron dies.
Patients with ALS, they become weak. They become weak both in their mouth, so they have difficulty swallowing and difficulty speaking, and they have weakness in their arms and legs, so they can't move around and they can't use their arms to feed themselves.
About 10% of ALS cases are genetic in nature. In other words, you're inherited from your mom or your dad. The rest of the 90% of cases are sporadic. We actually don't know what the underlying causes are.
From the time that they come in with a small weakness in their hands to the time of death is only 2 to 3 years.
ALS is one of the toughest diseases going. It's what I say is the brain in solo flight. It's the brain functioning without a body.
As Dr. Smith was telling us that he had ALS and drawing this little diagram for us and what that meant, I couldn't stop crying. I wasn't a crier up until then. I've since become a crier. And Augie is just staring. I remember driving back and just thinking, I shouldn't be driving. This isn't safe. I remember getting in the rental car shuttle, and there's this one poor other man in there with us, and I'm just bawling. Dave's bawling. Augie's just staring off in space. I'm thinking, this poor guy has no idea what's going on.
Here's a guy who's in control of everything. He had a beautiful wife, he had cars, he had houses, he had all kinds of business status and stature, and it was pretty scary because the decline was rapid. We were saying, but you're such a powerful guy, maybe you can put a face on it like others have of diseases, and maybe you can change the way we think about this stuff. I'd like to believe that there was a piece, maybe 1/10 of 1 millimeter piece of his brain that was recognizing he could make a difference. And then I read that he tried to commit suicide.
I told him in the emergency room that if he wanted to die, I understood it. I mean, here was some vibrant, amazing individual for 3 months, basically couldn't function.
I felt compassionate. I totally understood that. From what I understand, he took a bunch of sleeping pills, wanting to check out. I get it. This is scary. When he tried to take his life, I thought the last thing that my dad needs in this situation is more guilt and shame and secrecy. His mom took her life. That was never talked about in that family.
My dad was a very proud Mexican, and my mom was an Italian that could be easily molded and influenced, and it was difficult sometimes for her in that atmosphere. So she felt a lot of pressure, But yeah, she died of a heart attack at a rather young age, and just was
Was it a heart attack or was it suicide?
Well, if you want me to say the truth, it was suicide. I didn't know where I was going to go with all that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Mom had 6 of us, and 5 boys and her. There was a brother between Augie and me, Bobby, Robert formerly, but he passed away of leukemia when he was only 3 or 4 years old. And my mom passed away in 1975, the year I graduated from college, and it devastated me. It was, I sort of took it personally because the morning that it happened was the morning that I was going to my college graduation. And you know, why that morning? You know, why the morning that I was going to walk across the stage and get my diploma, and she wasn't going to be there? And why didn't she want to be there? Or what motivated her to do that day?
You know, in my mind, he was still infallible. And whatever he said was how you should live your life, and his words of advice were what he lived by. And a common theme that was always told to me was, you know, treat women with respect, follow through with what you promise, and never give up. And he gave up, he broke, in my mind, one of the cardinal rules that he taught me. And so why should this infallible man give me any advice?
I was with him when he got diagnosed, formally diagnosed with ALS at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. And he promised me that day that he would not try and commit suicide.
I felt my mom had done that, and now Augie was doing that, and I didn't go to the hospital. I was so upset.
I think we're all wrapped up in how it affected us. I'm just a believer that there's a reason for everything, and I know Augie hates that saying, but to me and my belief, I always believe that, you know, God has a plan and there's a reason for everything. You know, I don't
think we'd be as close as we are.
I don't think we'd be as close. I mean, we hang on to each other. I mean, Augie and I would do anything for any one of these boys and their kids and their spouses, and I know they would do the same for me.
At the hospital, I was able to hear most of what was said in my room. I had the surreal experience of being at my own memorial service. I realized I had taken the easy way out. I realized Lynne would support me in any way I needed. I realized I was loved. How could I be surrounded by them and want to be dead? I wanted to be a part of these amazing people's lives.
I'm gonna beat this son of a bitch.
He's an amazing salesperson, so when he stood up there and said, I'm gonna beat this, I think he was trying to sell himself as much as anybody else in the room, quite honestly.
Introducing you to a business giant who's being felled by a fast-moving fatal disease, but his single-minded passion to leave a legacy of hope has jump-started the search for a cure for the disease that may soon take his life. And that gave Augie's life a new purpose, fast-tracking a search for a cause, a treatment, and a cure, calling it Augie's Quest.
For the first 6 or 7 years of our diagnosis, everything was thought about in terms of when Augie dies. And everything needs to be a milestone. Everything, you know, has to be a big deal because there's a finish line that's coming up quite quickly.
I remember going over to his house and saying, if we're gonna do this, let's do it. And came up with the idea of let's hold a gala.
And Augie and Lynne, I have a check for you.
Wow!
$1,954,170. You know, I think of myself as a realist. I hate to see cancer patients that I care for only hear what they want to hear. My dad asked me on the side, confidentially in an email,
What did I think? Did I really think this was going to help him? I almost hate to admit this, but I responded that, honestly, I don't think so. If it does end up helping, probably not in his lifetime. I can still remember shortly thereafter, my sister answered, and he goes, "You sent that to Augie by mistake." So do I think, so I've been skeptical all along. I never meant to be blatant in front of Augie. But he's a smart guy and he knows the odds.
It will take us 2 hours to have a conversation that you could have in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I've had to learn to just be quiet so I'm not dominating the conversation.
Lynne walks into an accountant's office and tells him that she needs to file her taxes.
Oh, we've switched from thoughtful to dumb joke.
The accountant says, "Before we begin, I'll need to ask you a few questions." He gets her name, address, social insurance number, etc. And then asks, "What's your occupation?" "I'm a lady of the night," she says. The accountant is somewhat taken aback and says, "Let's try to rephrase that." The woman says, "Okay, I'm a high-end call girl." "No, that still won't work. Try again." They both think for a minute. Then the woman says, "I'm an elite chicken farmer." The accountant asks, "What does chicken farming have to do with being a prostitute?" "Well, I raised 1,000 little peckers last year." Chicken farmer it is.
Cute. That's at least somewhat clean.
And you actually think there's a chance that you can lick this thing?
I don't think I could get up in the morning if I didn't think so.
I wondered if finding a cure wasn't simply a business problem awaiting a solution. I needed a cutting-edge plan for the money I intended to raise. Then I met Jamie, who founded the ALS Therapy Development Institute.
When his brother Stephen was diagnosed with ALS, Jamie became a guerrilla scientist.
My brother called me and he said, "The news doesn't look good." I Googled ALS and progression, and I went home. I talked it through with my wife at the time, and I quit the next day. I think that was probably about the time when TDI was born. There's no place like this in the world. There's no place that's got this many talented people working directly on the problem. But after Stephen died, frankly, I kind of fell apart. I know I didn't have it in me. Augie's very direct and very aggressive and, caught this sense of what was going on and figured out the best way to make the organization operate forward.
Augie's a tough SOB. There's no two ways about it. And I don't mean that in anything that's unethical, because I believe Augie is probably one of the most ethical people I've ever seen.
And I understood the truth was that he was the only one that could take this to where I dreamed and Stephen dreamed it would go.
An entrepreneur has two skills that most people don't have. They don't listen to anybody. Yes or no? Second, they don't trust anyone. They do everything themselves.
What he's basically done is he's decided that he's going to be an entrepreneur in the ALS field, right?
I think the biggest difference, between Augie and even, I think, the four of us here is just how much more of a risk taker he is. He's never afraid to try something new.
Our dad was an oil field guy. That's where our trucking company started. We're all working for the Nieto and Sons trucking company, and Augie never had a part of that.
Augie's father worked with Shell Oil, and his ambition for Augie was to work at Shell Oil, and I think Lynn convinced him that he should go to college.
Dad was very work-oriented, that, nothing's given to you, you earn everything. Work is the most important thing, hard work gets you success.
Augie's sort of the outsider in that he was the only one that didn't go into the family business. I think my parents were very influential in getting Augie to consider that going to college was a good thing to do.
I was a sophomore and he was a freshman, and all we wanted to do was be in business. I mean, Augie and I would go to the locker room in a suit with a briefcase. People would laugh at us. I mean, we were just different. For us, this was just like purgatory. Anything over a C was wasted effort. So we decided to become distributors of weight equipment. We weren't making a ton of money on it, but we were having a blast. I mean, one day we're sitting in our office and this guy walks in, a doctor from Canada, and he says, I got this idea. I got this product called Life Cycle. Do you want it? People like Augie can see the future, and he saw a world where fitness was going to be important. And we were right at that cusp, right when Jim Fixx was talking about running.
And we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about running.
Racquetball clubs and Nautilus clubs, Jack LaLanne.
Now, if you have a figure problem, if you want to improve the bust line...
You know, the little jiggle thing that's going on there.
And they were big, clunky things, and we were putting them in the back of Datsun B210s with the hatchbacks and shoving them in there. And I drove around Southern California with them, and I didn't sell a single one.
I mean, it's the fountain of youth we were selling, and we could only sell 9 of them.
I left, and Scott left. Everybody was, so Augie was on his own. And somehow or other, he decided to give them away. And that's how he created the brand.
He got Life Cycle in. He got celebrities to endorse it. He'd give Life Cycles away to special clubs.
That one bike that was giving away would translate to 15 or 20 bikes because you could never take that bike out of the club. The members would revolt.
And then he sold it to Bally Fitness. I think he sold it for $24 million or something like that. And they sort of ran into problems, so Bally's had to sell its assets. And Augie, as the president of it, came back in and with investors. And so he, owned it, was president of it, bought it back, and then sold it to Brunswick, for, a boatload of money.
I always called him a very predatory type of competitor, and he drove his people really hard. And I worked with Augie for 4 years. I worked underneath him as his first national sales manager. And I kind of wanted to go out and do something on my own. Because I didn't think we were going to be friends for much longer if I worked with him.
One of the conversations Augie and I had is hey, listen, Augie, because he likes to tell everybody, I'm going to live for another 30 years. And so one of the conversations I had with Augie is hey, Augie, if you're going to live another 30 years, you got to be a better person.
So we never lost contact when we were both married to other people. Augie was actually a bridesmaid in my first wedding. And
what, excuse me?
A bridesmaid.
Maid.
Right. He and my brother.
We're bridesmaids.
Oh my goodness.
What is it? Oh my goodness!
What is it?
Underwear. Underwear, Mommy.
Sexy. That's a present for Mommy.
No, it's for Daddy.
I knew I was going to get green here.
But that without your pants.
Now Daddy's gonna look like Superman. Superman.
He had a steady girlfriend that he dated all through his college days. Karen was her name, and they eventually married. That was his first wife.
One of the things that was great about Karen is, Augie was aggressive, no limits. Karen was incredibly bright and but very grounded, and so they were actually It was a kind of a good balancing act for Augie.
Remember when he got married to Karen, I remember saying to him at his wedding, it's like, don't screw this up. Just don't screw it up. I want you to be happy.
Wonderful lady. I'm still friends with her. And what really hurt their marriage was Karen was an only child. Her father passed away when she was 10, and her mother was a German. Ingeborg is her name. And Ingeborg did not get along with Augie.
She didn't like me, that's for sure. And the feeling was mutual. But being married to someone so obsessed with success was the root of the problem. My days started at 6 in the morning and rarely ever ended before midnight. Not only was I ignoring my wife, but I was ignoring my children as well.
My dad is always the one to push the envelope on no matter what he's doing, whether it's, physical exercise, business, love. He'll push the envelope. It's what he's known for. It's how he's succeeded in life. And, he'll push it to the point where he breaks.
Austin, stop playing like that to me. I'll spank you so hard.
When I was young, I didn't have a good relationship with my father. But during that time, he was building an empire. He was really building Life Fitness. My dad literally did the best he could, how he could, with what he knew. I can't imagine knowing that you have a huge board meeting with some of the richest people in the world that will make or break your business, and he's coaching a bunch of kids who don't know how to throw over their head, let alone, shoot a basketball into a hoop. But at the time, as a child, you don't understand that. And all you want to do is, be around your dad.
He and I are very much alike personality-wise, so naturally we bumped heads a lot growing up. He would fight with me, and I'm a child and he was an adult. And we would fight about the same thing and have the same point. But I honestly feel like it was the only way that we could connect when I was little, is to fight.
Lindsay, what's the matter?
Why does it look like everybody would be
My home life was non-existent. Up until that point, I had never failed at anything I did.
Hey, nice. Nice one, Austin. Nice. Downhill works much better.
Hi, Mom. And also...
Isn't she pretty?
And also...
Yes.
Daddy.
Yes?
And also,
I came home one evening to find my clothes neatly packed in a suitcase. So I moved into a nearby hotel. I thought I'd be asked back. 19 months later, I caught on.
People change. We all change. And life is too short not to, to waste some other people's time, let alone waste yours, and with love.
I think he really loved Lynn that whole time, and that was the one that got away. And so when the Karen and Augie things weren't going that well, he went back to what he had loved and missed.
I was married 14 years. It doesn't look good on paper. But, from the time of my divorce till Augie and I got married was 6 months.
Really?
Yes, but we had been dating for about a year there. I always kind of think of Augie as like an old shoe.
It's really romantic. But life never works out that way. It's never as easy as that, right?
I've never done this one.
That good?
I never look at myself in a mirror.
At our age, it's just as well. Because I know that person looking back at me is not me.
I work with individuals who use augmentative alternative communication devices to communicate. So a lot with iPads or dedicated devices like what Augie uses. You don't really see too many people communicating with their toe.
Augie was, 100 emails a day on the board. It's very productive, so he needed a different type of a tool. It's a pretty unique package. Nobody really has it except for him. Most of this has been his idea. He came to me and he said, why don't we get a laptop that has 2 screens? And I said, well, we've got the mount, and there's going to be some challenges there. How about if we do this? And we kind of negotiate back and forth. And I get the idea that we'll try a larger trackball. And after a week of him using the trackball, I come back and he's using it with his feet. So again, it's his idea. As he moves that mouse a small amount, that'll adjust the flow of those letters and the speed of the flow. It's very intuitive. And as the letter crosses, the desired letter crosses that crosshair, it's added to the sentence. A lot of communication going on for somebody who they say can't communicate.
Augie kind of enabled us to go from this middling, frankly, organization with a really solid heart to an organization that still has the solid heart, but now was able to bring in the professionals and the technology necessary to go to that next level.
We needed the top researchers and scientists in the field working with us. We didn't have as much money as we needed, but Lynne and I weren't about to let that stop us.
I made the mistake, the critical mistake of giving Augie my cell phone number and my home phone number. He got my mother-in-law on the phone at one point, who was watching my kids at the time, and started pestering her that Steve has to leave Biogen. He's got a great career there, but he can do so much more for the world if he leaves and joins our nonprofit and builds out the research team. Finally, I went home after a few months of this, and I talked to my wife, and I said, I think I'm gonna join ALS TDI, and she looked at me, she was like, you're gonna join a nonprofit? We have about 25, 30 drug development programs going on any given time.
I mean, when you think about it, in medicine, what are we pretty good at? We are reasonably good at killing stuff faster than it kills us. What we're trying to do here is a little bit different. We're trying to figure out a way to keep something alive. We don't have an enemy. And I think as a result of that, we're going to need the new technologies, the bigger technologies, the big data to really lead the way.
When Augie had made the commitment that he was going to battle ALS and help find that first effective treatment or cure, he basically called and asked me, what is $100 million going to get me for an investment? And I said, well, it sounds like a lot of money, but $100 million in drug development may get you one drug into the clinic, and you'll have a 50-50 shot that it'll actually do anything.
I was a little nervous with Lynne and those scissors. I haven't been a good boy lately.
Researchers collected DNA samples pinpointing gene sites thought responsible for ALS. Researchers believe it could be an enormous breakthrough, all because of Augie Nieto.
He's taken all his marketing capability and sales capability and said, boy, this world of research is screwed up, and we can do it better.
All right, is this okay on top of, is this
Better
okay
right
on
now?
your hands?
So when Augie blinks once, it's yes, twice is no?
Okay.
Or same with his mouth open?
There's something to be said for the fact that this has been around for a while. This iteration obviously tries to carry through that compass. Tell me now.
Do you like that?
Do you like that?
Yeah. Yeah?
No.
Is it something, is
Am
it
I-
something here? Is it on the
Wait.
computer?
So, do you like that one?
Do you want to write?
No.
Okay, so if you can move your computer.
He's gonna write.
He's gonna write. He can't see to write.
I hate that.
Oh, this is not a good start, you guys. I hate it. That was a good day for me, Augie, I'm just saying. So if you don't effing like it, there might be some trouble.
There might be another good day.
See that hose down there? I might step on it.
My only thing is,
Wow, you took it there. Obviously, I'm
Interest.
just joking, by the way. Augie, you don't even know me. I have
We
what
like
I
you.
call
We like you.
an offensive sense of humor.
We like
oh
that.
my gosh.
It's
Oh no.
Oh.
No, no, no.
I should put you on my porn list.
The chairman of the board cannot be sending his employees inappropriate emails. That's an HR issue.
People don't get shit when they get porn from a dying man.
I can give you my personal email. I want to show you a picture of my son and my partner, so I'm going to get my phone. So that's Finn. And he turned 3 last week. And so my partner, her name is Anita. We've been together for over 15 years. And I'm just wondering how long I'm going to be able to get away with the emails before she susses it out. To get a tissue, sorry. Okay,
I know they like to do that. That was very sweet of you to say. I love you. She's back.
You made her cry.
Is that the goal? Or sometimes I just wipe my nose right on Augie for you.
I'm sorry. Should we tell Lynn about the other thing?
I already did.
What's that, the
I
porn
said
thing?
when they started talking
Yeah.
about porn, I left.
I mean, are you comfortable with that?
He's on the porn list.
You know what? I couldn't care less. I don't care.
Oh, man.
If you start having sex with him, it might bother me, but
The last time I saw Augie was back in 2009, and I honestly feared it might be the last time I would see him. But today, miraculously, he seems to be thriving by leaps and bounds. For the first time in years, he's actually working out again.
Straight up. And push. Nice job, Og. Keep it going. Kick. Heel back. Knee to your chest. Kick. And pull down. Good job, Og. Nicely done.
How long is his workout?
3 hours. I'm not exaggerating either.
We can see Augie getting stronger because before he cannot move his head and now he can. He cannot move his shoulder and his feet too.
Augie started and he didn't have any movement in his upper body, and now he can move his hand down into flexion all by himself. If I harness his arm up here, he can pull his elbow all the way down to his waist. So we placed electrodes on his upper body, and when I first started with Augie, he didn't get any muscle belly contractions. And now he actually responds to it, and you can see the tangible contractions in his muscles. I think he's stubborn. I think that he believes in finding a cure and making every step possible to get better, so that when there is a cure, his body's strong enough to accept it.
When we first heard that Augie had ALS, it was a shocking surprise to all of us. And it's even harder when you see somebody this triumphant and optimistic. It makes you plumb the depths of your own soul. You meet somebody like Augie, it's an education.
Without the computer, we do the alphabet. And he blinked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Q, R, S, T, R. S, T, R. 1, A. STRA. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ow! I know. Strap your belt. Oh, shoot. Oh. Oh, your head strap. How about this thing? It's okay? Yeah. Sorry. In the Philippines, we care the family, you know. We just don't like ignore or something. We have to take care of them. This is not like just job. We care. I've been doing this for so long. I guess 25, 6 years, 27. But other patients is not like him as active. With Augie, he just go and go and go.
It must be really hard for you.
It is hard, but I guess this is my journey.
We hate this beast van, but it is easier to get in and out. You ready? I met Augie in 1988. I was 38 years old, and he was 30. And we both joined a Young Presidents organization about the same time. He and I weren't real close pals. When Augie got diagnosed, you know, I went right in there. What can I do to help, you know, and made myself useful. But I'm real comfortable with it. It's not putting me out to do that, and it's just what I would want if I were him. Does that make sense? Congratulations on selling Octane. You feel like you're gonna miss the fitness industry?
Then convinced me that I shouldn't take on one more thing right now and that I should spend more of my efforts toward finding treatments and cures for ALS as chairman of the Institute.
Makes sense.
I'm the last guy to know, I'm sure you already know.
All right, heads up.
You're ready. We have a policy here if you're late that you get fined, and I happen to be the guy that collects the fines. So Augie gets no relief.
And he's usually here a half an hour early, right? Not because he has to be, because he doesn't want to give you any money.
All right, everybody quiet down. Augie's going to give us a report on Octane Fitness.
The Octane investment was 11 years. It was a win-win-win. Stock was up 10% this week. We have momentum. The reason why Nautilus paid $115 million is the team we built, the innovation and the growth in the international market.
Augie brought us this opportunity, and we've been invested in this for 11 years. We backed Augie because we believed in Augie. So we invested somewhat blindly, somewhat confidently, and 11 years later, we're now reaping the benefits of a tremendous investment. We're proud of Augie, and it just kind of goes to show you the guy's not able to speak, but he still can work behind the curtain, do magic.
And we didn't actually invest in Octane Fitness. We invested in Augie, so we all reap the benefit of, 5x, five-time return. Who wouldn't do that deal?
And we did it at the time that he got diagnosed with ALS. So we were betting on his future at a time when he was given a death sentence in 2 to 3 years.
It was exactly 11 years ago, guys, like this month, that Augie was diagnosed, about the same time we made the investment.
He has continued to be one of the most productive human beings on the planet, notwithstanding the disease. People who don't have the disease can't hold a candle to him.
Augie says you need an email. This went on for a couple years. So I go on to something and get an email address. I don't have any way to open it. I don't have a computer, but I get an email address. Okay. About a year later, the grandkids, of which I have a fair amount at this point in my life, buy me a Kindle computer gizmo thing. And of course, what immediately shows up is 1 year's worth of Augie's porn that he sent me.
I flat out told him, I said, I do not want to be on your list. He's got a frickin' twisted sense of humor.
So I have a woman with breasts about this big on the computer stuck.
I'm not on that list.
No, I'm not on the list.
Oh, I get the jokes. He's toned down the jokes a little bit over the years.
My wife hates it too. Holy shit.
That won't make it through my filter.
I remember sending a note going, dude, don't send it to people's corporate email.
I am also a recipient of the email. I appreciate just the beauty of nature.
A frustrated housewife bought a new pair of crotchless panties in an attempt to arouse her husband. After cooking his favorite meal for dinner and several glasses of wine, when she thought it was the appropriate moment, she uncrossed her legs just wide enough so that her husband could catch a revealing view. Then he asked, "Are you wearing crotchless panties?" "Yes," she answered with a seductive smile. "Thank God," he said, "I thought you were sitting on the cat."
One thing that scares Augie more than anything else in life is not to be relevant. I mean, and so when he sent those photographs to us, everybody's like, oh my God, is that cool? I mean, I can't wait for your next one, you know? And as he lived longer, we've gotten fewer of them. They're not quite as bad as they, you know, as they were before. They're intermingled with jokes now. He's learning how to be alive.
Most people with ALS, their legs are the first thing to go, but with Augie, it was his arms. So he could still walk, but he had dead arms. So this is what I call his penguin period.
And we're having our forum meeting in a nice restaurant. And everybody's in there for a couple hours, and he goes, hey, Pat, I gotta pee. Okay.
Yeah, he had to go to the bathroom, but he was unable to maneuver himself.
So he said.
Yeah, so he said.
Well, I had to do the bathroom with him. He says, unzip. I go, come on. He goes, oh. He goes, this is going to be really fun.
I stood behind him and I unzipped his pants and I pulled him down, and I didn't want him to wet himself, so I grabbed his unit and I was pointing it into the urinal. About that time, a stranger walked in the door of the restroom.
So he turns around and I'm here helping him with the zipper.
Got the visual, huh?
When the door opens.
The guy took a quick look, looked at there's three guys in there, two guys watching and one guy behind the other guy. Clearly looked like we were involved in some way.
So Augie's version of the story is he walked out and high-fived the guy. But we all know he can't high-five. And my version of this story is I walked out and said, next, this is a fundraiser.
I get to shower with my wife every day. Oh, yeah. This morning, she was fully clothed, and then all of a sudden got naked. And I go, oh man, this is a beautiful thing.
Too much information, dear.
You know what? You have to laugh every day.
When I first needed help, I didn't want anyone but Lynn to help me shower and get ready in the morning. It was just a nice time that we would spend together every day. But then it started taking more time, and it got harder. I tried to be his caregiver way, way, way too long. I'd be ready to get a caregiver, and then he wasn't, and vice versa. And I'll say that to people diagnosed today, is do it before you need to, because it took such a toll. It's hard to be a physical caregiver to somebody you have an emotional attachment to. One night I was trying to get him in bed, and he could still, I could get him up in the wheelchair and still kind of transfer him and get him over onto the bed. But I got him up, and his legs were weak, and I was losing it, and he's got 70 pounds or so on me. And he fell back into the wheelchair with his back, and it probably hurt him. He was safe,
But he was so mad at me, he goes, I want a divorce. And I am not proud of what I said back to him. But I just remember thinking, I am trying so hard. I hadn't slept through the night for 6 years.
Why didn't you leave him?
Because there's a special place in hell for those people, I'm convinced. You don't leave somebody in their dying days. You don't do that. We were doing marriage therapy, but I'll always remember sitting in this one session, and it was like this light bulb went off for Augie that, hey, she's not me. Somebody can feel differently in the same situation from a different perspective. And from then on, it seemed like there was a huge change. Huge change. I think that Augie's finally really realized that we were diagnosed. It wasn't just him.
If you were ever to get diagnosed with something, you go, I would want my spouse to be just like Lynne is. Because not only is she there by his side for everything, but she is his partner and fighting this, and not just with him, but also in raising funds to try and help find the cure for ALS. She is just there, and she has become his voice.
The hardest thing to see Augie decline is his eyes. Because he has a sparkle in his eyes. He got it back. He lost it, and when he went on the vent, it brought it back.
Once the mouth and the breathing muscles get involved, that's where people die from the disease.
People make choices to be on a ventilator and stay alive with this disease for varying reasons. I'm going to tell you, at least in this country, 90% or more of patients to choose not to do that, whether or not they have money. I have many a patient who have plenty of money who decided this is not what they want to do.
I spent an evening with a good friend of ours who had lost his wife, and it felt really good to hear somebody else talking about what it was like, because I was in a place that I was going to lose my husband soon. And I think both of us wanted to struggle to have a relationship that would be sad to lose. June 3rd, 2011. I have these visions of cleaning things out immediately after Augie is gone, especially the medical equipment. I am really going to go from one extreme to the other. Our house is full of people all the time now, and will only get worse with a trach. And once Augie dies, it will be empty. Augie's loss will be horrible any way I look at it. So give in, get close, and allow my heart to bleed with Augie's. Be brave, be vulnerable, go home. It was exceptionally painful. He didn't even go under for it. A friend of ours once told us that general anesthesia would probably make the disease progress faster. It was a very scary thing to go through, and the nurse that came home with us from the hospital told me ahead of time he's going to have 7 weeks of hell and then it will get better. And I said, don't tell him that. You know, please don't tell him that. And about a week and a half into it, I told him because I didn't want him to think that this was it, because it was awful. So what the trach did is it allowed him to get a normal amount of air. Is that too hot? Air's good stuff, apparently, right? And that was huge. Should I stop? Do the rest? You're not supposed to have that much caffeine. You're taking advantage of the situation.
I think it's hard for people to see Augie in a position where he can't move, he can't run, he can't golf, he can't do all the things that they were comfortable doing. I think he had some friends that they were very, very active together. And I think some people were very uncomfortable with that.
I would imagine there are a lot of people out there that are in the business world who see the business side of Augie, but that guy has a heart. I mean, tears can come to his eyes pretty easily, and if you ever needed anything, he would be there in a heartbeat. Are you gonna play Elvis to Augie? Well, I wanted to say to Augie, whoever I'm looking at, I have huge regrets for not being a better friend. I just didn't know what to do, and sometimes you stick your head under a pillow, and then you pull your head out, and you go, shh, and then you stick your head back under. And I have a lifetime of regrets for doing that, so my apologies. I love him dearly.
I think that it's actually harder for people around the patient than it is for the patient to go through it. I think it's harder on friends to see me in a wheelchair than it is for me to be in a wheelchair.
When I was diagnosed with ALS, at first, I scrambled to get organized. Then I bought a Mercedes convertible and started traveling. Slowing, painfully, my marriage fell apart. So, I made the choice to redesign my life once again.
And then he came in your life.
We met at the VA hospital. I was working as an intern in nursing school, and I fell in love with my first patient, and that's where nursing school led me.
How's it changed your relationship?
I don't know. This is funny. I was actually talking to my mom this morning, and I was like, I mean, we met when I was 18, and he was completely healthy 19-year-old. And I'm like, I don't even remember that anymore in a weird way.
I mean, honestly, there are times when we're getting him into the shower, or the hand doesn't work, or this doesn't work, and we just look at each other and we're like, this is so fucked up.
I was 28 when my arm started to twitch. I can't go any further without saying we had our first date on a Friday, and then that following morning I noticed my left arm was twitching.
Pat was diagnosed on that day after waiting for almost 2 years. So to get the diagnosis of your boyfriend at the time, we weren't married yet, and I've been there ever since.
I'm lucky that Corey is so positive, and he doesn't complain, and
I'm pretty vain.
I didn't say you weren't vain. I said you don't complain. And he makes it easy and fun to be with.
Now, obviously, he's, predisposed to get this. But he was in such a profound period of stress when it triggered. And almost everybody I've talked to went through the same thing. It was a really stressful time in my life. And that was the trigger. So I don't know. I'm no doctor, but.
I feel like I've made myself sick from the stress and from just not taking care of myself emotionally and mentally. And I have a holistic doctor that I've seen, and he describes that we're all born with a path, and we all have along this path are doors. And what happens in your life that triggers that door to open for you?
In retrospect, I think a lot of it was Augie had left Life Fitness after that being his entire career from right out of college. And he started another startup called Colorado Way. And it was getting rough. It was getting really rough.
I just couldn't with good conscience lose other people's money. And the stress seemed to bring on strange muscle contractions in my chest.
I have good days and bad days. I feel sometimes like I'm walking around in this haze, but not when I get into my studio, and not when I start teaching, and not when I work out. The haze is gone. Again, God knows we can't control anything else in our lives, We might as well work to control our own body, right?
You know, you got life and death on the mind a lot. So people are always, you know, how do you feel about the fact that your kids might not, you know you and everything like that? And I do think that love is bigger than death. The way I feel about my wife and my kids is somewhat transcendent. So like, this body is nothing in comparison to that, maybe.
After Mom was diagnosed, I did what many people do. You start getting on the internet and you try and research everything you can about the disease. Are there any cures? Are there any treatments? Are there any studies that she could go through? Anything to help this person be around longer, because you just can't even imagine the thought of them not being with you. And Augie's name just kept popping up.
You've got something unprecedented right now. I mean, you got guys like Pat Quinn, Jay Smith, Steve Gleason, Augie. You know, 10, 15 years ago, people got ALS and they went home and nobody saw them again. And all of a sudden, you've got these brave people out there and they're saying, I want people to see this. I want people to see what it's doing to me. Because somewhere in our heart of hearts, we all believe that we're gonna change it. You have to believe it, you know, to get through the day. But in addition to that, we actually believe it. You know, that we can cure this.
You can take away the money, you can't take away the fame. Lights will fade, hearts will break, some things will never change. In the middle of it all, when you don't know what it means, keep hanging on to your house of dreams. House of dreams. House of dreams. House of dreams.
I am ready for the ice now.
Like a stone. To be alone, love is what makes a house a home. We feel like we're on a roll, we can feel it in our bones. Love is what makes a house a home.
It brought in $220 million globally for ALS.
Every August until a cure.
House of dreams.
Lynn's a jewel. And I asked her maybe 9 months ago. I said, okay, God, how you doing? You know, God. She said, Alan. And she, you know, kind of slapped me around because I think I was a little irreverent when I asked the question, like, how you doing? Is, you know, everything's shitty? Or, and she said, no. She said, Augie and I are right now having the most personal, best time of our lives.
Best time of the day. So Augie says, I have outlived everyone who was my class of 2005. That's pretty much true. You've invested alongside me knowing that I was going to die. You so weren't gonna die. Actually, I have to say I thought you were gonna die, but I don't anymore.
How do you take a guy in a 400-pound wheelchair on a commercial airline?
Look at that. That's crazy.
Is that a handshake?
That's an improvement.
That's wonderful.
That's an improvement.
First time I did it, I was terrified. I'm lifting him up, and he's looking at me with this scowl, and he's getting redder and redder, like a beet, you know, like, and I'm setting him down. I think, what are you mad at me for? You know, I'm helping you, dude. And he's just going like that, and this just then the stewardess picks the hose up and goes, oh, what's this? The respirator hose fell out, right? It plugs right in, but it fell out on the floor, and I didn't notice it. And now I've done it like 4 or 5 times, like, okay, not a problem. Here we go.
He's a hero. I mean, what he introduced, the cardiovascular side of fitness with the life cycle bike, was a defining moment in the industry. We wouldn't be here as an industry if it wasn't for what he's done.
Paces up a little more. That's always my easy way to get out.
Wow, surprise. We've actually done better than I expected.
The reality is, if we can find a cure for this, we can maybe use that for other similar diseases. So, I mean, he's helping millions and millions of people.
We get caught up in our lives and just how stressed out we are, and when things get bad, and then you come and hang out here and it's like, all right, I can do anything. Or you see Augie and like he's walking someone down the aisle. It's just, you just know you could do anything.
I remember when Augie was training, like he was training for a triathlon. Nothing was gonna stop him from walking his daughter down the aisle.
He has this beautiful childish passion for life. He is hungry for life. I don't want to miss out on all that fun. I don't want to miss out on seeing my figurative grandkids. I don't want to miss out on missing my great-great-great-great-great-grandkids. I'll never see them. And until you come to peace with the fact that you weren't designed to experience it all, and whatever piece you do get to experience, that's your gift. And he tells me about once a week, he tells me, I'm happy. I'm happy.
One thought I do remember when he was first diagnosed was he's never going to see me get married.
Okay, you ready?
He's never going to see me have children.
Okay. All right, what do you think it is? Girl? Okay, pink's a girl. Okay, let's see what you know.
Yeah.
Blue's a boy.
The name lives on.
But it's scary because as awesome as Augie is doing, and he is doing amazing, you just never know. I'd say every few months, Austin has a breakdown. I mean, it's so hard. You don't know what to say. You're just there and you love him.
One of the biggest things I think I've learned is it's okay to be uncomfortable. You know, lean into it. I went through my series of panic attacks, you know, while I wasn't leaning into it. And I live after those fears. I live after that discomfort. I'm afraid to get my hopes up. I'm cautiously optimistic. Over walking, I'd rather have him talk. I mourn big time not being able to hear that voice.
A busy bee spreads pollen to keep the flowers blooming.
But if anyone can do it, gosh, it's gotta be him. My freak of nature, I don't know.
One day we had a knock on the door. It was a realtor, and he asked if the house was for sale because he had heard the owner had died. I love this house. Every morning I wake up in a home I could never have imagined as a kid. Right after my diagnosis, I told Lynne this was where I wanted to die. Now it's where I want to live.
I have a better husband today than I did 11 years ago. Augie talks about winning the war on ALS, and he has done everything to win that war, and he's fought it bravely. He's determined, he's tenacious, and he's singly focused on this. And I do believe in my heart of hearts that he will succeed.
You've always been around through all my ups and downs. You're a beautiful place to be. This is how I look at you. After all I've said and done, you're the home I've come to love. Your soul shines like the sun. This is how I look at you. Love has paved my way. I'm a better person. There's so much I could say. One thing's for certain. You are who I am. This is how I look at you. Love has paved my way. I'm a better person. There's so much I could say. One thing's for certain. You are who I am. This is how I look at you. This is how